Okay, so I was just writing a comment defending Dark Souls 2 a little bit, and I thought, well, let's make a video. Let's share these thoughts. See if there's anyone out there who agrees with me. Now, yes, Dark Souls 2 has a lot of problems. I'm not gonna go into that. There are many videos online on YouTube criticizing Dark Souls 2 because of the same reason. However, I still think that Dark Souls 2 had, first of all, amazing moments, amazing boss fights, and there are five things that I consider make Dark Souls 2 stand out, even from the rest of the games. In Dark Souls, and by the rest of the games, I mean Demon Souls, Dark Souls 1, Dark Souls 3, Bloodborne, and even Sekiro, to a degree. Right, so the first thing that Dark Souls 2, I believe, did very nicely was customization. Character customization was insane. In Dark Souls 2, there are many spells for intelligence builds, for pyromancy, for faith builds, and then they added the dark magic, the dark spells, the dark whatever. You know. If you've played the game, you know what I'm talking about. And that added more layers to customization. It added more options for the player. It added a ton of weapons, armors, rings. You can always mix and match whatever you like. But another thing that they also did is that there were many sets, many pieces of equipment, and many sets with effects. So, for example, there were many shields with regen, or many shields with life regen. I meant HP regen. Many shields with stamina regen. Many shields with more poise, etc. That was great because in Dark Souls 1, for example, you only have the Grass Crest shield, and if you want stamina regen, that's your only option other than the Chloranthy ring. In Dark Souls 2, I remember at least 2 shields with stamina regen. So you have the mechanic, but also there's a little bit of aesthetic in case that's what you're thinking about. So that was great. Also, dual wielding. Dual wielding was fantastic because in Dark Souls 2, what they did is that if you had 2 weapons of the same class. Okay, so in Dark Souls 1, it was very common to see people wearing 2 katanas, right? One on the left hand, one on the right hand. So Dark Souls 2, I imagine that the developers saw this and they say, hey, let's have fun with this. So in Dark Souls 2, what happened is that you could wield 2 weapons of the same class in each hand, and if you press triangle, if you keep on the PS3, that is, I played on the PS3. If you hold triangle, then your character would change stances. So he would go like this, and the moveset would change, and that was great because it added another layer of customization that I thought was amazing. I mean, of course, you have to forego your shield, but it was a risk-reward situation, right? You have less defense, but your damage output was insane. Especially if you were like me and you built a Dragon Knight wielding 2 dragon greatswords, the ones that you could get from killing the Guardian Dragon before the Dragon Area. Yeah, first of all, it looks really cool, which I think it's important, but you deal a lot of damage, and that was great. Dark Souls 3, I feel like it diminished this concept. It devolved in this area because what Dark Souls 3 did was Dark Souls 3 had some weapons that had a dual stance, but you were restricted to using that weapon. There's the most common one is the one that is always used in speedruns, the one that you can get in the Farron Swamp. But again, you're restricted to that weapon, to that specific weapon, and to that specific build, because that's a dexterity weapon. There's also the Ring Knight Greatsword, the one that you can get in the Ringed City. But again, you are in that case you're restricted to a strength build. In Dark Souls 2, you could be a dexterity build with 2 katanas, or with 2 short swords, or with 2 great swords, 2 lances, or pikes, or axes, whatever you wanted, and it was possible. And the other important thing is that you could have one sword in one hand, for example, a fire sword and an electric sword. I don't know, or 2 different weapons. As long as they were the same class, they didn't need to be the same weapon. Like, you didn't need to have 2 copies of a short sword or 2 copies of a great sword. As long as they were from the same class, you could activate the dual stance, and that was amazing. That was great. Second point that Dark Souls 2 did, PvP. Now, this is a little bit more subjective, and obviously it lies down on my experience, my connection, and everything. But I feel that PvP was great in Dark Souls 2. It was amazing. It's the only game in this series where I went out of my way to actually play PvP. I'm not a PvP player. I've never been more of a single player. But in Dark Souls 2, I genuinely wanted to play PvP. I remember spending hours in the Iron Keep bridge at the start of the level, where most people would place their signs or invade, just to have fun fights with each other, and it was great. I felt that the servers were more stable. Dark Souls 1, sorry, they were always very janky, very slow. Dark Souls 2 was great in that regard, and because you had the different covenants, it was great. Now, Dark Souls 3 maintained these covenants and these ideas, but they didn't do anything with that. They just copy-pasted, so they don't get a pass for that, I suppose. Third point that Dark Souls 2 did that I thought was incredible: the Bonfire Aesthetic. That concept was fantastic. That concept was great. Because since Dark Souls 1, and even after Dark Souls 2, people have been complaining that because you don't have like a way to control difficulty, people have been asking for an easier difficulty, which I don't know why you would want that, but okay, whatever. Dark Souls 2 gave you a choice. Hey, if you beat the boss of this area, you could go to a bonfire, use it, and increase the difficulty from this particular area. Not only that, you revive the boss. That was great. First of all, optional. So if it's optional, no player is obligated or forced to use it. Second, as I already mentioned, is a way for the player to control difficulty. So if you feel that the game has been too easy, hey, you can increase the difficulty. You can challenge yourself. Number 3, it is rewarding. Because if you use the Bonfire Aesthetic, you can get the boss rewards that you would get from New Game Plus on regular New Game. So if you want to challenge yourself, you can get the boss souls, and with the boss souls, you can then exchange them for the different weapons and the different spells. So I remember that when I played with an intelligence build, I farmed the Dux de Freya, because that way I could get the Moonlight Greatsword, and I could also get the Crystal Soul Spears on my New Game playthrough, and I could destroy the game because I like destroying games. So that's amazing. That's really, really good. That's a really good concept. It can be challenging. You could also do it in the Dragon area to farm Dragon Bones, the ones that you need to improve special weapons, unique weapons, whatever. But yeah, you could do that. Again, it's optional. It's a way to control difficulty, and it's rewarding. It rewards you in game and outside of the game. So great. Number 4, Dark Souls 2 is the only game that made it a point to change New Game Plus. So in Dark Souls 1, you go to New Game Plus 1, New Game Plus 2, whatever. The only change is enemy health, enemy damage. Well, that's nothing really. It's the same game, but you take more damage and enemies take more damage in order to be killed. That's not too interesting. Dark Souls 2 Dark Souls 2 didn't do that. Dark Souls 2, it added phantoms. It added red phantoms in some areas. Some of them could ambush you. Some of them you could see, but it was different. It was different. It was a different experience. Not only that, this was not only exclusive to the levels themselves, but to some boss fights. The best example I can think of right now is the Lost Sinner. In the Lost Sinner fight, when you get the boss down to half his HP, two NPCs would spawn and they'd start attacking you, making the fight more complicated because if I remember correctly, both are pyromancers. And now the Lost Sinner is really fast, and when you are trying to deal with the quickness of the Lost Sinner while also trying to avoid the pyromancer's attacks, it makes the fight more difficult. And it was great. Again, you could access all of these changes with a Bonfire Aesthetic, but if you didn't know about that, then you go to New Game Plus and hey, everything's different. So that was very good. It's the only game in the series that made me do at least 2 playthroughs with each character. Again, because the game was different. It wasn't just that I'm taking more damage and that I have to deal more damage. No, the game itself is different, so that's great. Finally, my last point as to why Dark Souls 2 is actually better than people give it credit for, the DLC. I personally, again, this is all subjective, right? All of these points are subjective, but I feel like Dark Souls 2 has the best DLC that FromSoft has produced. And here's the reason. In Dark Souls 1, Dark Souls 3, and Bloodborne, I mean, DLC has been great, don't get me wrong. I love the DLC from those games, but it's just more of the same, right? It's nothing different, right? It's just more of what you can already find in the base game, right? Just more areas, more enemies, more boss fights, more weapons, and that's great, don't get me wrong. Again, that's great. I love those DLCs. I love the Old Hunters DLC from Bloodborne, so don't get me wrong. That's not what I'm saying. But Dark Souls 2, each piece of DLC was, first of all, distinctive from the base game, but also distinctive from each other. So each Crown DLC had their own feel, their own style of level design, and it was fantastic. Let's look at this. Let's think about this. The Crown of the Sunken King. Okay, so in the Crown of the Sunken King, that was the developer's response to Dark Souls 2 doesn't have the same level design as Dark Souls 1. The interconnecting maze-like feel is there, and it's great. The way in which you traverse the sunken Shulva, the way in which you traverse Shulva, that's the name of the area. It's great. The elevators, everything, and you unlock all of these shortcuts that make going back and forth from the boss. It's amazing. It's amazing. So that's the first one. Interconnectedness, maze-like design from Dark Souls 1. Amazing. Really good. The Crown of the Iron King felt like a Metroidvania. I don't know if I'm making sense. How do I explain this? First of all, it added verticality. The level was very vertical. But also, it changed everything. When you activated the towers, now obviously your character doesn't get any special abilities like Samus does in her game that allows for easier traversal and that allows her to access other areas. But the way they did that is by activating the towers. When you activate the towers, a lot of elevators would start working again. They would start functioning again. So a lot of areas that were previously inaccessible suddenly become accessible. And that was great because as you were descending, you would take all these mental notes. The level design made it possible for you to take all these mental notes. And then when you returned, you could access them. And so there were little entrances here and there, like some prison-like areas. The elevators would make some upper areas accessible, some lower areas accessible. It was great. It was a fantastic way of adapting the Metroidvania concept into Dark Souls. I thought that was very, very good. Plus, the boss fight with the Fume Knight, legendary. Very, very good. Finally, you have the Crown of the Ivory King, which to me is the best piece of DLC that FromSoft has produced, but also the worst, because that fucking Frigid Outskirts can go to hell. That's the only piece of Soulsborne content that I have never finished, and I refuse to finish because screw that area. Screw that area. But ignoring the Frigid Outskirts, Ilium Lois is so fucking cool. It's so fucking cool because what they do is that, alright, so you go and you get a tour of the area, right? You get an initial tour of the area. And then when you reach Alsana, I want to say, I don't remember exactly her name, but when you reach her, one of the daughters of Manus, when you reach her, she would make the snowstorm subside. And when this happens, you get to tour the level again, but it's entirely different. It's entirely different. And not just in terms of level design, meaning you could access areas that were previously inaccessible, but in terms of combat as well, because lots of enemies that were dormant or frozen because of the snowstorm are now roaming the area. So combat has changed again. That was great. That was fantastic. That was really cool. And finally, the Crown of the Ivory King has, in my opinion, again, this is all my opinion, the most epic boss fight that the Soul series has ever produced. The final boss fight with the Ivory King is so amazing. First of all, you're descending, right? You're descending into the Heart of Chaos thing, and you're followed by the Ilium Lois Knights, right? So that, first of all, that's great. Recruiting the Ilium Lois Knights is optional, right? So you can control how easy or how hard you want to make this fight for you. That's another good point, right? Okay, so you're descending, and then the knights follow you. And so instead of fighting the boss immediately, you have to do this short ward of attrition against the corrupted knights. And I think that the balance is great because it's not too short, but it's also not too long, right? So it gives you an opportunity to really test yourself, but without staying too long and making it boring. And then you see the knights as they get frozen to seal the gates, to prevent more knights from coming out. Again, that goes back to the point of the player gets to control how easy or how hard they want to make this boss fight. And then, after a couple of minutes have passed, and the gates are sealed, you see the center gate, and you see this freaking amazing entrance by the Ivory King, and you start fighting him, and it's amazing. The boss fight itself is not too difficult, but the storytelling, the set piece, how it builds itself, so good. It's so good. I cannot praise the DLC in Dark Souls 2 enough. Again, I think it's the best piece of DLC content that From Software has produced. So there you go. Those are my 5 reasons why Dark Souls 2 is a better game that people give it credit for. I'm not saying it's the best of the series, but I do think that it is a much better game that people tend to believe.